Police Chief Dave Cathaldi will be making a presentation on the proposed Brighton Police Department reform plan. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Let me share my screen. There we go. Mr. Supervisor, member of the town boards, thank you for trusting me in helping to create this draft plan and present it this evening. I'm always proud to be able to speak as your chief of police. Without the support of the elected leadership of this town, we couldn't have such a well-respected police department. Let me caution you when you read the plan. I'm not a wordsmith by trade, but I like to think I have the passion to convey that your department is here to provide a high level of service to the community. This is just an overview of our discussion tonight. I like to think of this as an opportunity to create positive change, not only in our agency, but a way to create stronger bonds between the police and the communities we serve. Everything you will read in the plan centers around what we've done as an agency and how we can improve our service to the community. I like to think we are years ahead of the curve because community policing has been ingrained in every officer in our department. I'll discuss our efforts when it comes to training, to include our leadership training and how we have a culture that fosters those efforts. I'll also discuss some of our efforts when it comes to community engagement and the community outreach we have been doing for years. Lastly, I'll briefly discuss how the 21st Century Task Force on Policing has positioned our department. As you know, in June of last year, the governor signed an executive order requiring each chief executive from the local municipality to work in coordination with the chief of police to gather stakeholders to examine policing in their respective communities. Our efforts in creating this plan started back in August when we engaged with stakeholders at Temple Growth Kodesh to hear from the community, to hear their thoughts about community policing, and insight was gained about policing topics that aided what I have here in this plan. This draft plan will be put out to the public for 2 weeks, and after comments are heard, will be up for adoption by the town board no later than April 1st. Then, of course, the town has to certify it and complete the process. During the presentation, I'll discuss our organizational structure, the culture and philosophy of the department, some of our training initiatives, our body-worn camera program, police discipline, our interagency relationships with other law enforcement agencies, and our community interactions. This chart describes the structure of our department. It simply shows that orders and command flow from the top on down. It is hierarchical in nature, and it is led by the town board and town supervisor. This model also provides clear lines of authority internally within the organization, which allows for command and control. The chart was last updated in 2018 with the addition of a third lieutenant spot to add accountability on each respective shift. Our staffing levels have remained constant for over 20 years. We have a current authorized strength of 40 full-time sworn officers who work in the community and 6 part-time sworn officers who strictly provide court security and are restricted to inside the facility. We currently have 3 vacancies, which brings down our full-time staff to 37. I've held those vacancies for some time now, looking for diversity hires. This is from citydata.com. As you can see from the chart, our community's almost 80% white. However, we are a very diverse community. There are 5 public schools within Brighton and several private and parochial schools. We may be known to have one of the larger Jewish populations outside of New York City here in Brighton, but we are also home to one of the largest mosques in the area, which leads to strong interfaith alliances. Even though the nighttime population is about 36,000 residents, the population swells during the day with large office parks, colleges, and commuter traffic. And our staffing levels adjust to reflect that change. As I said, we have a very diverse staff in Brighton, and I would argue one of the most diverse departments in Monroe County outside of the city of Rochester. I believe that the 90% response rate from the survey, who stated that we are professional, directly correlates with 86% of our staff, 37 college educated members who have a college degree. We actually have 3 officers who also have master's degrees. Diversity in law enforcement has been a constant struggle for law enforcement around the country, and that includes locally. We have made gains. We currently have 5 females within the sworn staff, and one of those females has a first-line supervisory position. Women have a place in policing, and research suggests they actually have lower incidences of use of force than their male counterparts. We continue to identify opportunities for career growth and for recruiting more females into the profession. The 11% figure when it comes to diversity. We currently have 3 Hispanic officers, 1 Black officer, and 1 officer demographically identified as other, which equates to about 11% of our sworn staff. Again, we are trying to diversify our department as much as possible, but civil service laws can be a barrier, and all agencies are recruiting from the same small pool of candidates in Monroe County. We did promote the first Hispanic captain ever last year. There are only 2 captains in the organizational chart, and this is a senior level command position within the department. I hope to have more exciting news to come in 2021. Our civilian staff includes all the professionals who support our mission, but just are not sworn officers. These include our administrative office staff, crossing guards, and animal control officers. As you can see, we have 9% of our civilian staff, and they're made up of 2 Black females, which also creates a very diversified civilian staff. Written policies only provide guide rails for the officers. When we get members to internalize our methods and why we do what we do, we win and the community wins. We've been an accredited law enforcement agency since 1991, the very first in Monroe County to be state accredited. We actually have reaccreditation this June. Monroe County is actually the only county in New York State to have all of its law enforcement agencies accredited. We are one of only 25% of the agencies in New York State that are accredited. We completed a total overhaul of our policies, which started in 2017 and ended in 2019. We have come a long way from a paper and pen method, which was cumbersome at best. Our policy management company provides us with a combination of lawyers, which provide legally vetted policies, law enforcement experts to provide best practices, and a way to ensure we have the most up-to-date policies. It would be nearly impossible to keep up to date with the New York State legal changes and changes implemented by the Division of Criminal Justice Services, which is the controlling body for law enforcement in New York State. With our policy management system, we also have a mechanism to train our officers monthly on the policies, and all of that data can be tracked relative to policy acceptance and training. Our Guardian philosophy is created from our hiring standards to the onboarding process, to our field training program, and our ongoing continual training. This philosophy has been internalized in our members. We are here to serve the public. We also have 1 supervisor for every 3 to 4 officers, and those supervisors are actively at scenes to assist and provide direction to staff. Usually when the problem occurs at a scene, one of my first questions is, where was the supervisor? Some of the training initiatives. The Basic Police Academy in New York State is a minimum of 700 hours. Here in Monroe County, we are currently over 1,000 hours. The additional 300 plus hours of training is to have additional local topics included in our instructions specific to our communities. As you can see in the left column, this is where the basic education of a police officer begins when relating to people from diverse backgrounds, whether it's ethics and professionalism, cultural diversity, instruction on bias-related incidents, professional communication skills, or interacting with persons with disability. The goal here is to provide a trained officer before they enter into a field training program where they can begin the experiential training with a senior police officer who has been trained in the adult education methods and rating of new officers. The training period for a new officer is a minimum of 16 weeks. As you can see, a 26-week police academy and another 16 weeks of field training is a significant investment in time and money. Some of our other training initiatives: we provide leadership training to our supervisors so they can effectively supervise and manage their workforce. We have partnerships with our risk management provider, the New York Municipal Insurance Reciprocity, to provide web-based access to several training modules that can be done on a 24/7 basis, which balances fiscal responsibility with the need for training. Our annual and ongoing training produces a well-rounded police officer. As such, 100% of our staff have mental health first aid training. We were actually recertified again this year. Over 45% of our staff are crisis intervention trained, with a future goal of having 100% of our staff trained in crisis intervention, which will assist us in our approach to helping in our response to those in the community in distress. Those two specific blocks of instructions are important because there are studies to suggest that 25% of police-involved shootings involve someone suffering a mental health crisis. And we can provide training to recognize those in distress. We can attempt to de-escalate through those skills learned in that training. Everything I just discussed is an attempt to align policy, training, and supervision, which gives us a recipe for success. The policy guides our decisions, the training assists us in implementing the policy, and our supervision manages the incident to ensure compliance and provides immediate feedback if necessary. When one of these systems is out of alignment, it increases the room for error. Our body-worn camera program was instituted back in 2016. We are one of the first agencies to have a controlling policy in place when cameras are activated, leaving no discretion when they are to be activated. As of today, we have over 81,000 video interactions with citizens. We tried several different cameras, but Axon was able to provide us a turnkey system. Part of the consideration with the other cameras was the back-end support through our IT or information technology infrastructure. And this was the best alternative for us to proceed. Since 2016, we've continually reviewed their capabilities of the body-worn camera system. Currently, they are part of a robust use of force reporting system where cameras are reviewed at several administrative levels within the organization. Recently, we instructed and advised all body-worn camera to be reviewed for accuracy with compliance when arrests are made within the department. Police discipline. Both captains either have or will receive professional training in conducting internal investigations involving our members. Actually, most of the matters result from an internal complaint made by either myself or another command officer. Complaints from citizens can be anything from calling 911 to speak with a supervisor about the explanation of a policy or procedure, up to and including an allegation of misconduct. Looking over about a 5-year average, we receive about 25 complaints a year. It may seem like a lot, but when that's based on about 49,000 calls on average each year, that equates to about 1 complaint per 2,000 calls for service, which is a pretty small number. I plan to add this data for our 2021 annual report moving forward. We also have a robust use of force review where each supervisor of the officer has to review the use of force to ensure its compliance with policy and procedure. We recently added a de-escalation narrative in our use of force reporting to change the thinking of officers before using force. In 2018, the town passed a local law essentially removing union arbitration from the discipline process. What that means is that This Wallkill decision, it's a court case, is in essence a citizen review where the elected officials weigh in on disciplinary matters and actually determine the discipline. There are no better officials to evaluate and consider discipline than elected officials because they are the ones responsive to the community. There's no passing the buck or extra bureaucracy. This slide, I just want to stress how we collaborate here in Monroe County. At least once a month, the Law Enforcement Council, made up from the Monroe County Chiefs of Police, meet to discuss issues that affect law enforcement in the county, either in whole or part, and can work collaboratively to solve problems. We also help to direct training efforts, policy changes, and new initiatives. All the agencies work together to share resources when necessary. Our strength is derived from our partnerships, both internally and externally. We have at times partnered with the New York State Police to provide assistance from their hate crimes task force when an incident occurs in town, or their campus sexual assault task force when a reported sexual assault occurs on a college campus. The Monroe County Sheriff's Office has provided aid in the form of their commercial vehicle enforcement unit, their bomb squad, and even their mounted unit for parades. The FBI has assisted us in cold case investigations, and we work closely with them for those institutions who have a heightened risk and higher profile when it comes to targeted violence. The community organizations aid us in policy development, intentionally or not. The highlight of our January 2021 in-service training was interacting with Dylan and his friends from Campaign D, an autism awareness group that advocates for those who have autism. It's probably the most fun I've seen from officers interacting with community members in a long time in a group setting. Officers at the end of the training even approached me to see how they can build on that relationship, which I plan on doing in 2021. The Forensic Intervention Team, or FIT, is a service provided through Monroe County Resources who have the capability to assist us when interacting with those who experience a mental health crisis. We currently work best with FIT in a post-crisis response to ensure the necessary services are being offered and to interact with a community member at a more relaxed time, rather when they are in a crisis mode. Another long-standing partner in the community has been both the Bavona Child Advocacy Center and Lifespan, who help us with investigating crimes against our most vulnerable populations, children and the elderly. I have to start by stressing that COVID cannot be underestimated in the disruption on all of the initiatives you see here listed in 2020 and now going on into 2021. This level of engagement has been ingrained in all that we do. Each of these events brings about conversations in a less formal setting. For instance, I've participated in panel presentations and group presentations with the Black Student Unions, McQuaid, 12 Corners Middle School. Even though I haven't met with the Brighton High School Black Student Union, my predecessor did, and I intend to get back to doing that once COVID subsides. We do a lot of community engagement, as you can see, whether it's the pizza with the chief, coffee with a cop, or our annual bike rodeo, or our interaction with police explorers. But we are committed to doing more community engagement once it's safe to do so. Community is beyond the borders of Brighton. If we haven't learned as a police organization yet, and as a profession, that incidents that occur across our country or even regionally, they affect us here locally in Brighton. One component of the governor's directive is about community stakeholders to include faith-based alliances. I participate with all three faith-based alliances: the United Christian Leadership Ministry, the Ministers and Police Alliance for Community Transformation, and the Monroe County Alliance for Transformation of Community and Police. And I'm always looking to do more. This is where the relationships are made, where we can have those sometimes uncomfortable conversations and we can share our perspectives in a non-judgmental way. We had a community forum back in August last year at Temple Brith Kodesh, where we had those discussions. on many of the things we are talking about tonight. Myself, along with my other command staff, attended 5 other forums from Fairport, East Rochester, all the way out to Hilton. We heard and interacted with many community members across a broad spectrum. Some of those recommendations appear in this draft plan. Secondly, the governor discussed evidence-based policing. The partnerships with both Roberts Wesleyan and RIT are going to serve us well in the future. In the plan, you will find our first community survey in over 20 years and probably longer. I am proud of the work that RIT has done, and even more proud of the results of the efforts of the men and women of this department. As a supervisor was saying, we had 856 responses from the community. Other community surveys with larger agencies I saw with less than 200 responses. The top 4 responses regarding interactions with the Brighton police were professionalism, respectful, helpful, and fair. Further, on page 7 of the RIT report, 90% of the respondents reported Brighton police have a positive relationship with the community. That number alone speaks volume about the men and women in this department. Compassion and empathy are our values we instill in our members, and that reflects in this survey. I do believe as a department, we get it right most of the time. That's not to say that we're perfect, but as the survey shows, we are definitely on the right path. I am still interested in more effective outreach to the marginalized communities. And I recognize that. I'll let the survey speak for itself and will share only a brief synopsis tonight. In the interest of transparency, the survey will be attached to this plan and be made available for the public to read in whole. This is a slide from page 16 of the survey that demonstrates how satisfied people were who had interactions with the Brighton Police Department. Over half, 54%, reported being very satisfied. And I'll quote from the survey, "These results indicate that respondents were overwhelmingly satisfied with their interactions with the Brighton Police over the last 12 months. This chart is from page 22 of the survey regarding the safety and quality of life in Brighton. The numbers are pretty good, with 82% who agree or strongly agree that we take care of the overall safety and security of the community. Even in the marginalized communities, respondents posted a response of 70% believe we take care of the community's overall safety and security. When it comes to maintaining a quality of life, I look at the 57% rating in the marginalized communities, and this is where I think the work needs to be done. I'm committed to increasing our outreach and our response to those members through designated department liaisons and targeted efforts to make inroads in those communities. I plan on bringing procedural justice training to our department, as evidenced in my 2021 goals and objectives. Much of our current training involves components of de-escalation, whether it be mental health first aid or a crisis intervention training. I do plan on bringing more de-escalation training to our department to ingrain and instill those concepts into our culture. We did the 21-day challenge to create dialogue among staff and then followed it up with in-person racial and diversity education, even though it had to be done via Zoom. We are a well-educated police department with 86% of staff with a college education. And I think the most common response from the survey with the description about professional bears that out. We are always looking for ways to expand our training initiatives, especially to aid us in assisting marginalized communities. We have an officer who partners with a member of the FIT team or forensic intervention team that does post-crisis follow-up to those who've experienced an emotional crisis in the community. And this model has served us well. We had over 400 contacts in 2020. We have other members assigned as liaisons to aid our efforts in building bridges and creating relationships in those marginalized communities. And in 2021, I will look for ways to expand those efforts and to create those relationships. The mission of the Brighton Police Department, included in the plan, states, the principal mission of the Brighton Police Department is to serve and protect the citizens of the town of Brighton, remembering that the police must serve all citizens impartially, respecting the rights of individuals regardless of race, creed, or color. My plan is to identify those marginalized groups and conduct a targeted outreach when it is safe to do so. Again, hopefully we can get back to a more robust community engagement when it's safe to do so and restart such initiatives as a Citizens Police Academy, where citizens can interact with the police. I understand the importance of diversity in law enforcement, and I'm committed to doing better. We have a survey in the field by Roberts Wesleyan to assist us in answering how best to identify and recruit a more diversified candidate. Remember, we are competing against every other agency in this county and beyond to diversify our departments. I've spoken to young people in diverse groups like the Police Career Exam Prep, which is assisting in putting diverse members into a law enforcement career pipeline. We have an Explorer program in Brighton, and youth from even outside of Brighton participate, and that is a great way for our youth to explore careers in law enforcement. Promoting a diverse work group is dependent upon members taking a civil service test and being able to score in the top 3, even to be promoted. Hiring new officers requires the same rule of 3. And again, we compete against every other agency in this county trying to hire a diversified workforce. For transparency in our process, I plan on inviting a panel of citizens to participate in the interviewing process to make sure we continue to get the right candidates. We started a community engagement initiative to create better bonds between officers in the community back in 2013. Our annual report actually started tracking these numbers to identify our progress in community engagement. Over the last 2 years, we averaged over 27,000 self-initiated calls for service, which include examples such as foot patrols, structured traffic patrols in neighborhoods, and giving special attentions to those institutions in our community who may have a heightened sense of a security threat. As I mentioned before, we have several initiatives such as DARE, Car Safety Seat Inspection Program, our annual bike rodeo, and even something as simple as officers getting out of their car, walking at the Brighton Farmers Market, engaging with the community. These are all initiatives that will continue when it is safe to do so. This entire slide, to me, represents communication. Every time we interact with a citizen reporting a crime, we give them a victim's rights card with the officer's contact information, and we reinforce that message to staff every chance we get to circle back with the crime victim and those reporting incidents to follow up on their cases. I do agree, FOIL can seem cumbersome at times, but is the best method to ensure the right people get the right information. We don't release anything that could cause an unwarranted invasion of personal privacy. Our new computer-aided dispatch system and records management system will be going live soon. Once it's up and running, we should be able to have more immediate and reliable data to report out to the community. If I can incorporate a dashboard, if you will, to improve upon our twice-a-week police blotter or our annual report, I will research such an option. I'm already gathering new data for our 2020 annual report to include as much demographic data on whom we are interacting with in the community, from traffic tickets to arrest data. Another recurring theme from the survey is my support for the Black Lives Matter movement. The chiefs of Monroe County issued a statement shortly after the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, and I actively participate with 3 faith-based alliances where the hard work is actually done. I've also spoken to several different Black student unions or groups about these issues. I will continue with those efforts when the pandemic ends. But quite simply, yes, Black Lives Matter. We are still learning, and I plan on continuing the necessary work to provide the community with the highest level of service possible. I'm not sure what those responses will ultimately look like, or what the cost will be, but our research will continue into any appropriate alternative responses. Everything we do is aimed at being the most professional organization we can be and not resting with only being good. Everything we've been doing since 2015 is being done in alignment with President Obama's 21st Century Policing Task Force. So I like to think we have a head start on many agencies. That task force report positioned us 5 years ago to be where we are today. I think we do pretty well on all the pillars, but we have more work to do in building trust and legitimacy, which is a constant theme I hear from the community. Communication and transparency are the main objectives of this effort. Just remember, this draft plan is not the end and won't be put on a shelf. It's only a jumping off point and will hopefully guide us for the next 5, 10, or 15 years. Thanks for listening to me this evening. This draft plan will be made available on all of our department's social media sites, to include the town's website, the police department's Facebook page, and my Twitter feed. I look forward to more dialogue in the coming weeks when the community will be able to participate and offer comments. As the supervisor said, next Tuesday at 7 p.m., there'll be more details to follow. But in the meantime, you can offer input at communityinput@townofbrighton.org. Thank you.